So yeah, so let's just get things started up with the who, what, where. Who are you? Where are you at? And where are you from?
Yeah, so my name is Megan Robertson. I currently live in Denver, Colorado, but grew up outside of Boston, Massachusetts.
We're gonna start out with actually this might be a controversial question for you. Do
Okay.
you do you still use paper for work or personal?
Um, I do all the time personally. I'm a big like handwriter of notes. Like I literally have next to me, like I take notes all the time. So I don't know. I think for me, like, yeah, typing I can be faster, but the act of physically writing, like, just helps me remember things better. So my office, there's like a bunch of papers everywhere right now.
Okay, so you're firmly taking the pro paper stance.
Yes.
Okay, I get behind that too. I'm a big notebook person. I had like stacks of composition books and just okay. So I do know that you are a bit of a globetrotter, like a traveler. Have you been doing much traveling recently, or
Um, I'd say since the spring, I've been sticking to the US, but East Coast to visit family, and such. But this spring I presented at a conference in Lithuania. So I went to there, Latvia, and Estonia, which was, if you had asked me like what foreign countries are you going to next, that would have been probably pretty low on the list, but the opportunity came up and I was like, sure, I'll go to Eastern Europe for a bit and present and see what it's about.
okay? Okay, this is super random, but the last startup I worked for, I have a couple of Udemy courses that I presented.
Mhm.
Just kind of hanging out there. So occasionally I'll get somebody reaching out to me on LinkedIn that's like, "Hey, do you have any resources for this?" So I was like, "Oh boy, let me point you in the right direction." But a couple of them have been from Eastern Europe. So is what was that like being in that community?
Um, I'd say it was pretty cool just to like I got there a few days early to try to adjust to the time change, and it's definitely a part of the world where it's like they're a bit more reserved. And like I went to some museum and like smiled at the woman when I bought my ticket, and it like looked like it physically pained her to like smile back. So, but then to like go to the conference and I did my presentation, I got to meet a lot of people that I'm like, oh, okay, you just have to like kind of have a conversation and then they're a bit more outgoing. So, um, yeah, it was just really, really cool. Because like I said, it was never a part of the world I saw myself going to anytime soon.
Okay, give me a letter grade. What was as a traveler? How was it overall?
Um, I mean, I'll give them an A in that it's like it's very easy to travel, like to travel to. You know, I went by myself through like most of that trip apart from the conference. So as a woman traveling alone, I was never worried about anything. And I think too, it's neat because people tend to be just excited that you're there visiting because it's not like a Paris or a London or a Rome where they're used to it. And like there is tourism, but um really beautiful nature, like old growth, really dense forests, and then you're on the coast of the Baltic Sea. So like I would go back. I had a great time. Really good food too, which I just wasn't expecting because you don't really hear about like Lithuanian cuisine or anything, but has some really good food and lots of interesting history.
Absolutely. I'm kind of jealous. I always love the in-betweens, feels
Yeah.
like I mean the big stuff is always cool, but every like really cool like random interesting thing has been just places I never expected it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I gotta pump you for like one hopefully hot take, controversial one.
Okay.
Give me a regional US food that is super overrated, and then give me one that lives up to the hype.
Okay. I have a Northeast bias in that I lived in New York City for a few years. And I'm like, the food there, yes, but I'll say a New York bagel like that will live up to the hype for sure. Colorado just hasn't figured it out yet, and I was just there last month, and I currently have a dozen New York bagels in my freezer that I like ration until my next trip because they freeze very well. I don't know if I would. Okay, I don't want to throw the whole region under the bus, and I know neighboring New Mexico, this is like dangerous to say, but definitely when I was in New Mexico, I think there were some places that just put chilies on stuff to like hide the fact that the food was fine. It wasn't bad. Um, so I just found it hard. Like maybe I wasn't looking in the right place, but like I think that that's a region where they really lean into that chili, but not every place uses it well, and they just sometimes put it on there to like be like, look, we're New Mexican. I'm sure I'll get heat for that.
Okay.
And if people want to tell me where to go, I'd greatly appreciate it because
I'm completely with you. You know, I'll return it in kind, so I can also put myself out there. Lives up to the hype is pretty much anything on the East Coast. Cheesesteaks in Philly, pick anything New York's famous for, chopped cheese, pizza, bagels, fantastic. Overhyped, Texas barbecue. There's a lot of extremely good barbecue places all across the country, and every place I've gone in Texas was awesome, but not something you couldn't get anywhere else.
yeah. I forget which one I went to when I was driving through Texas and Austin, and I was like, okay, I'll pay a little more. Every place was like, this is the one of the top places in Austin. And I was kind of like, I don't know. I'm kind of mad at how much I just paid for that. So
Bingo. Hey, that's my exact same experience. Come fight us, Texas. I mean, folks, like, come on. This is Megan Robertson, an elite performer, ex Nike, doesn't get bigger than that in the B2C world, quite literally. You're doing a consultancy yourself. You're just an incredible career. Like it's insane. And where you're going, I'm so excited that we get to watch. So
man, I gotta call you when I'm feeling down. Just quite the hype up.
Oh my gosh, and it's all 100% true. Like that's the coolest thing about these meetups and communities. Like you get to meet these like just absolutely incredible things, and you know, things and people, and we're at a point where, you know, sometimes like the economy happens and whatnot. So yeah, it's pretty cool that that you're talking to me right now. So across these different experiences that you've had, you know, as like literally like there's no major league that gets bigger than Nike. Now you're out on your own in consultancy. How big of a problem is the issue of model maintenance and drift?
I mean, I think it's hard to put like an exact quantity on it. One, because companies aren't out here saying, hey, we built this cool thing and then we didn't pay attention to it, and now it's actually harming our business. So I will say though, I think it's one of those things that when you're thinking about working in AI and machine learning and data science, it's not one of like the cool, sleek, and I hate when people use this word to describe working in tech, but like not one of the sexy parts of it, right? The cool part is building that model, using the latest technology. But the reality is oftentimes we're using these models and algorithms to, you know, maybe change how we're interacting with customers or modifying behavior. So it's not uncommon over time, right? Of like your customer base is going to change, or whatever you're monitoring is going to change, whether that's something happens like, I don't know, a little global pandemic that lasts a few years, or you're maybe intervening in their behavior, so it's changing. So it's definitely one of those things where if you're not thinking about it as you're putting these models into production, can really come to kind of bite you in the behind pretty quickly. And you might find yourself with a stakeholder saying, hey, everything was great, and now your model's kind of actively harming us. And it's just something to keep in mind, especially as you think about your reputation and your team's reputation. So I'm trying to remember the exact quote from one of the books I read, because I'm pretty sure it's gonna be in the deck, but it's basically around, it's something along the lines of like, every model will drift. It's just a matter of when.
Okay. Jesus. Hell of an answer there, Megan. You're good. Do you give interviews often? You're good at this.
Thanks. I have not done a lot of interviews. I've been doing a lot of with the like trying to build the consultancy, the like more conferences and meetups. And when you talk to clients, you kind of have to sound like you know what you're doing. So that also has helped as well.
I love that. So your talk is all about what happens after a model is in production. Was there a specific moment, like maybe at your time at Nike or some working with your customers, where you saw a model very quietly go off the rails and you just realized, like, oh,
Yeah, I'd say without getting into too much detail, that there's definitely one where, you know, it's working great, everyone's happy, and then I remember a colleague messaged me saying, "Hey, you know, does this look right to you?" And I kind of looked at it quickly and I was like, "I think so. I think it was just probably an off day, maybe." And then like 2 or 3 weeks later, it's kind of like, "Oh, wait, no, this is definitely," and like they had just caught it a bit earlier, and I was much more junior in my career. And now knowing what I know now, I was like, wow, so I thought I had monitoring in place. And in reality, it was all of the things I didn't really think through. What are the different things that could go wrong? And those weren't actively being monitoring. So it wasn't until they started showing up in stakeholder results that were supposed to be used in a customer facing products that it became very obvious. And that kind of led to a bit of a, okay, drop everything else this week. This is a bit of a fire that needs to be put out. And ended up like straightening everything out, but it definitely kind of changed that relationship a little bit and a bit of the trust between both parties. So I think that was just a big lesson for me of like, yeah, it's cool to put this, you know, cutting edge algorithm into production, but over time you need to ensure that those results are still happening because your stakeholders are going to remember the moments where like they couldn't do their jobs because of what you built broke, for example.
okay. That makes a lot of sense. God, I wish I was rich. I wish I had a high power attorney because I would love to be able to like break the NDA. I got you. I need to get details. Well, so that, I mean, that's kind of perfect because your talk description mentions that model drift can threaten the team's reputation, which is a very powerful statement. So as a consultant now, what's the most common blind spot you see?
So I'll say for the clients that I work with, if things are going to production, I would be the person kind of monitoring that. So I'll say for if you hire me to do that, you won't have a blind spot because of my experience. But I think that from my experience and just knowing people in the industry in general, especially for companies that are maybe earlier in that data journey and they're getting newer to modeling, they can underestimate the amount of time and resources it takes to stand up something like that. Because if you're a company that maybe you're hiring your first data engineer and your first data analyst or scientist, and I've worked for people before who think it's just we do magic, right? Like you go write code, you took math in your stats classes in grad school or whatever, and you can build this model for me. And now AI is apparently going to make everything easier, right? But I think they can underestimate like what does it take to find, for example, you know, the right database system for your team or the right cloud computing, and what does it mean to set up an ingestion pipeline and have proper monitoring, and what are all these different technologies that you can choose to go into that. So I think that especially as like their use cases get a bit more complex, just the amount of time that goes into more of this this structure and process, because I think that as in tech, like especially data science, we kind of get this reputation of that's advanced math, I don't understand it. But it should be straightforward because you just write the code or you just ask ChatGPT what to do and then it builds it. So I'd say that's something that can often get overlooked is like those timelines and the cost of some of those like programs and computational resources.
Okay. I feel like you have a really interesting perspective because like in tech, especially with bleeding edge stuff like this, we're still trying to cast off the whole like move fast, break things, which relied on unlimited budgets with
Yep.
free money from the government, basically. So like what would be just like a brief summary of like what your skill set can do to help people get it right from the jump as companies are starting to get into this space?
Hmm. Yeah, so I'd say my background especially, and what I enjoy most about data science has always been being that bridge between the technical and non-technical. So I've been writing code for over a decade. I have multiple degrees in math and statistics. So for me to be able to take a business problem and questions that maybe don't have that quantitative framework, understand truly what you need, build out that data solution so that in a way that ensures longevity and can be updated as it needs to, like really being able to apply those technical skills to businesses is what my background is. And that's what I really enjoy doing because it's a lot of, I think of it as problem solving as well as teamwork. So getting the different subject matter experts together, combining that knowledge and figuring out a solution that's going to solve the problem. And as the business changes, can like recognize when that problem or when that solution needs to be adapted or just scrapped and then figure out what the next best thing is. So really like I call myself a problem solver, which seems very vague. Um, but just helping some of this more advanced technology and modeling just also feel more accessible to people as well.
Okay. For a team that has models in production, but maybe doesn't have a robust system yet, what's the first step? What's the 20% of effort that gets them 80% of the way to a good monitoring setup?
I mean, I would say first, just fundamentally understanding what are the like the potential risks and pitfalls if something were to happen. So common things are like, okay, this data pipeline breaks, or all of a sudden, instead of Fahrenheit, the temperature's coming through in Celsius. So just thinking of like identifying based on your use case and application, what are those biggest risks, but also the consequences of those risks, because then that will help you guide like, okay, if I'm not going to build a robust monitoring system, which spoiler alert, you should, it'll at least get you to cover some of those like potential, those higher consequences events. And that's where you can start maybe thinking about implementing some of those monitoring things or those checks that can alert you if something's starting to go off the rails.
Sure. Well, so you're out in the wild, as a consultant. Like, are you running into like people, clients, customers, even just like people you're meeting, like not having those robust systems built in a lot?
Um, it depends on the stage of the company. So up until this point, I've mostly done smaller or medium-sized companies that don't have that budget for a full-time data team. So oftentimes I'll be kind of building out that first model, for example. So it's more of they just don't know what they don't know. I will say, and I won't name any names, and I will give the disclaimer. I've had multiple internships and I've worked at multiple companies. So this is if people are like, oh, she's talking about time at X, it's not necessarily that, but I've been also in data science teams that have been established for many years who, they're not even doing something as simple as code review because they're just kind of getting stuff done as fast as they can. So I think companies are a bit more robust with it now, especially with how AI is taking off, right? They're recognizing this is the value of having data and using that data in an effective manner. So it's definitely becoming, I think, more popular. And like the rise of ML ops as its own field out of DevOps, like a huge concentration on that is around how do we monitor systems in production as related to machine learning. So I'll say it's better than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, but I find with some of those earlier companies, they're, like I said, they just don't know what they should be doing. And that's where I can come in and kind of give some of that guidance. So it depends on the culture at the company, as well as just who do they have in their leadership team that maybe have more of a technical background and recognize the importance of such systems.
Okay. So do you have like a call to action of like just a quick thing of like how to fix it? Hire Megan Robertson.
Yeah, I'd say I give a plug for myself. I think it'll be similar to the answer to that 2080 question is, when you're building a solution, hopefully you're understanding from the get-go, what pain point is this solving? What hurdle is this getting us past? How will this be useful? But also thinking longer term of, if something breaks with this, what is that risk? How could that affect our business? And really kind of practice thinking through those questions, because that's going to inform, what level of, I keep saying monitoring, because that's kind of the key to all of this, but like thinking through what sort of things make sense of, if this breaks, who needs to know, and figuring out what those systems look like. But it's kind of like everything in life, like what's the probability of something and what's that potential consequence? And then from there, you can start thinking about, well, what system makes sense for our use case? Yeah, so I'd say from modeling side of things, so some examples of things that I've built and then subsequently like tested to be able to quantify their worth. So I built an algorithm that helped a large company change how they were allocating very coveted products to their customers. There was a company that was operating on that scarcity model, right? Of, we have this really cool, stylish thing, but we only have X number to give out to people. And there was a lot of concern about people trying to game that system. So if it's an online entry, hypothetically, you can find a bot or something to figure out how to enter you multiple times. And so I was able to build an algorithm for that and work with the team to put it into production that basically used different metrics that the company decided was like indicative of being a good and a deserving customer to redo how they allocate product. And through some testing in like the live production customer facing environment, found that using that new method actually led to people spending more at their company, which was really cool. But it's like that would be an example of one thing. There was another project I worked on where it was another digital experience, and they're trying to understand what sort of things keep people engaged and coming back to their application day after day. So with the team, I was able to build a model that looked at some measure of engagement each day and was able to figure out what are those high value actions. So if you do X on Monday in this app, which could be using a feature, going to a live stream, what's your probability of coming back in the next day and the next week? And that's something that then, for example, a content team or a marketing team can use to understand that customer base and think about how can they, update an experience in an app, or how can they push people into more of those high value actions that they're finding rewarding to keeping them to come back for that engagement. So I'd say those are some concrete examples where a lot of my experience has been working with marketing teams and in digital experiences. So I tend to think of in sales and engagement terms, but those were all examples of systems that were put into production. Stakeholders were looking at them either through a dashboard or a weekly report. And if those failed, then that would become very noticeable. So that's why I'm always like, it's go back to the monitoring your things in production, because you'll learn the hard way if you don't do it right.
Boom! That's an answer. Holy moly. That's so good. That's so good. So you're making you're putting stuff in front of the right people moving the bottom line and making more money in a more authentic way. Like, that's insane. That's the best answer to that question I've heard in this business. Like, holy shit, well done. Like, just throw the rest of the way. Hire Megan. Good God.
Thanks. And it really, in my opinion, it comes down to getting a solid understanding of the business you're working for, your stakeholder needs. And I think it can be easy to get caught up in, like, let me just go build the coolest thing that's interesting to me, but doesn't actually end up helping anybody else. And you see that a lot in data science and machine learning of, oh, what's the newest technology coming out? What's Meta doing? What's Google doing? And it's like, great, their resources and their needs are vastly different and don't apply to other companies at all times. So it's also, you need to have like a good business understanding and strong leadership too, to kind of be able to say, hey, you asked for this, but understanding what my stakeholder team needs and their goals, this is actually a better solution. How can we get that done? And it can be easy to just fall into the hype trap of, so many companies now are like LLM chatbots, agentic AI. That is amazing for some specific use cases, but that's not going to be the end all solution for every person. And I think we're starting to see that a little bit around brands leaning into AI, and it's not being managed well, and like reputations are getting damaged and customers are kind of starting to feel some of those effects.
Oh man, I'm like, man, I should hit you with the hardball questions now. She can take it. Well, no, truthfully, I mean, that's that. So, like, my personal take on like AI machine learning is it's here to stay. It's like we don't know where it's going yet. But like the business cases of a lot of the stuff that people think of when they think of AI are just part and parcel like crap. Like chatbots and nonsense that and we don't have to get into the whole like political and economic situation, but it feels like what you're doing is real.
I mean, I would say so, and that's not to say I wouldn't recommend a client if the use case was appropriate of like, hey, here's where you could use agentic AI or like a retrieval augmented generation. Like it needs to fit the use case, the budget, and especially around like on the subject of monitoring models. There doesn't seem to yet be a universal consensus on how can I quantify the performance of my LLM, right? Like I send text back and forth to ChatGPT. The human on the end, can be like, that's just wrong. And then ChatGPT will say like, oh, great point. And then maybe give me more misinformation. Like, I know that's wrong, but if I'm thinking about monitoring the performance of language models, like with that gets kind of tricky as well. And there's, in my opinion, not as enough of an emphasis on understanding like, why are these models making the decisions that they're making? A big trend is let's take another LLM to evaluate this LLM's performance. And I'm like, we're taking models trained in similar ways. Seems like we're just reinforcing maybe the bias of those models with one another. So yeah, I think it has good use cases, but I think that a lot of companies now are trying to hop onto that hype to say, hey, we use AI, we're forward thinking, we're not going to get left behind. And they're not seeing the benefits that are being promised by the leaders of a lot of these AI companies.
Hell of an answer. I really hope for the people that end up watching this thing, I really hope that Megan's professional, mature, and calculated demeanor does not obfuscate how much of a shooter you are. Like this, like Megan is a heavy. Like you're an aircraft carrier here. Like your skill, talent, like it's just really cool to talk to somebody with like this elite level of like mathematical skill and talent, able to like kind of just, I mean, and even this one-on-one, meaningless conversation in the grand scheme of things, like not try to pull people into the hype. So that's incredibly cool. So I'm super excited for you to talk with our community about all this kind of stuff, because voices like this, I think, are going to help AI stick around and actually start doing some things. So like for this talk that we have coming up, what's just one thing that you hope people walk away either thinking or feeling or something like that?
I would like people to feel like if they're newer to this space, that this is something that is achievable. So as I have it planned right now, it's definitely going to be a bit more high level conceptual, not really getting into the nitty gritty of coding, partially because there's multiple solutions that exist out there for this problem. But for me, as someone who I started out in like a statistics background, worked in data science, and have gained a lot more engineering skills over the years, I would say this definitely, in my opinion, would be more of like an MLOps or more of an engineering subject than I've normally done at speaking events. So I just want people to walk away feeling like, okay, I understand the problem, I understand why it's important, and now here are some resources that I can go take a look at so I can apply this in my own job. So I'd say that's definitely one thing. And then also, as I've touched on earlier in this conversation, that this is one of those problems that doesn't get the cool, flashy, it's not on the cover of TechCrunch if someone is innovating and capturing modeled drift, or maybe TechCrunch, I don't know. But like, it's kind of one of those tasks that makes such a difference. And if it's working properly, people won't know about it. But if you don't have it, it's going to definitely cause some issues. So just having people understand the importance of it, even though it's not as cool as saying, I built this system of AI agents to do blah, blah, blah.
All right, let's wrap it up. Megan, where can people find you? What are they up to? Your talk is November 18th at Code Talent in Denver. Obviously, the links will be everywhere. But yeah, what are you up to? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so I am on LinkedIn as Megan Robertson. And then my website is megrobdatascience.com. So I have a list of different services I offer to clients, as well as recordings of past speaking engagements. I think there's a way to contact me on there as well.
Okay, so if you're looking for actual business use cases from a person who is agnostic to big tech, you would be the person to navigate this world for, I mean, any size company, but you specialize in SMBs, right?
Yeah, so I'd say my background has been a lot of retail, just given that I was at Nike for every years. Worked with a kind of medium-sized online retailer. I've also talked to some early stage startups as well. So I'd say that I'm very good at understanding the different nuances of businesses, and being able to provide some technical solutions. And to be frank, if I don't think I'm the best person for the job, because I believe in, I want to get my reputation, but I also want my clients to find the best solution as well. Like, I've referred potential clients to other professionals as well who are a bit more suited to their needs too. So really, it's very important to me that I'm, building solutions that work really well for clients and that both parties are happy.
Sweet. That's wonderful. Well, I just want to, from the bottom of my heart and the AI MLC of the Rockies, thank you so much for your time. And for people that have stuck around for this long, thank you. And please, please, please go check out her talk. Say hi to her. It is going to be a heater.
Thank you.
All right. Well, have a good one.
Thanks.
What a shitty end. God. Stop recording.